Okay, hello everybody. I'm Diana Brownstone, Certified Consulting Astrologer, New York City, and it is March 21st, 2015, and we're going to talk about the astrology of this year. So here we go. Yesterday, we had a solar eclipse. Has anybody been feeling really stressed and drained and zapped? Yes. Okay. This was huge. This was really a huge week astrologically because we had the last of the Uranus-Pluto squares, which is an alignment that happens every 40 to 60 years when Uranus and Pluto make another angle to themselves. And they made 7 squares, and the last one was earlier this week, which has to do with revolutionary energy, breakthroughs, and people bucking up against authority. Pluto and Capricorn, which is government authority, or any sort of things in your life that are really set in stone that you need to kind of rebel against in order to make changes. And we had a solar eclipse, and from this map you can see that the eclipse went over most of Europe. And interestingly, if you see if it went across China and Russia, all the way across, that's the exact place where the eclipse was, that there's so much happening with the new Asian International Development Bank happening, almost see it solidifying with this eclipse, that whole area. And as part of the setup of the Shanghai Corporation organization, it gave Russia control of the heartland, which stretches from Eastern Europe to the Yangtze River. And that's pretty much where this eclipse is. And if you look in the news, so much is happening, and there was a lot on the internet about Putin this last week because he was nowhere to be seen, and I looked up in his chart and there was Neptune everywhere, so there was a lot of misinformation and deception surrounding that. But in any event, this eclipse was at 29.5 degrees Pisces, which is the 30th degree of Pisces, which is the last degree of the zodiac. So if you think about it, it's the very last degree, and when you have an eclipse, it kind of sears that energy, it highlights it into our consciousness. So eclipses in general have to do with a high degree of like electrical energy. It sort of leaves you zapped. When you know there's an eclipse coming up, you're going to know that that week ahead of it, there's going to be a lot of stresses, maybe a lot of shocks, a lot of huge events coming, and it triggers things. So get really exhausted, so you want to catch up on your sleep, eat well, drink a lot of water. So it's a solar eclipse is an event that really is going to last and take place over the course of the next 6 months. Even if the event occurs during that time, it's going to play out over time, and it's kind of a critical, unexpected event. It can be something that's deserved or undeserved. It's just something that comes up out of the blue. And at the final degree of the zodiac, that has to do with endings. So what it's doing is it's reminding us all that all the things in your life that are ending or that need to end, that you need to finish up, you need to really, this particular degree, the Sabian symbol for the 30th degree of Pisces, has to do with setting an image in your mind and projecting it forward so that you can manifest it, because Pisces has to do with the intuition and subconscious and psychic energy. So what you direct your mind on an image of what you want to produce over the next 6 months and visualize it. Visualize yourself completing it, visualize exactly how you want it to manifest, and you'll be able to work towards it. That's what this eclipse in particular was about. This eclipse also occurred within 12 hours of the cardinal ingress, the spring ingress, 0 degrees Aries. So it's a new moon with a high point at the last degree of the zodiac, and then the cardinal point at 0 degrees Aries. So it's a new beginning, but a matter of finishing things up. Okay. So other things that were happening at the end of this week was the CERN-Hadron Collider. It's restarting for another 2 years. Kind of a big event. The gold fix restart, which has to do with the setting of the price of gold, which was normally done twice a day by 4 players, 4 big banks, and it's now an electronic fixing, and there are a lot more players involved. So basically, so whoever has the most money can sort of rig it. But it's a new setup, so we'll see how it plays out. Iran is at the first point of their negotiations for their nuclear deal, which has been extended till June. So this was just a very key week. And here's the U.S. astrology chart in the center with the Aries ingress, which is here 0 degrees Aries at the bottom. And you can see where the words ascendant, AS for ascendant, and MC midheaven, where they're falling in this chart. The ascendant, which is the rising sign, which is normally this degree would be, is falling on the Neptune, which has to do with things that are hidden, unseen. Neptune has to do with oil, has to do with the 9th house, is international relations, so obviously oil is a big deal. There's a lot of things that are unseen happening behind the scenes. Neptune sort of undermines the actual reality, so you can't really see what's going on. And here the midheaven of that chart is very near our Mars, which has to do with taking aggressive action, but it's in our 7th house of our allies or our enemies. So those are the 2 key points that are highlighted in the Aries ingress chart. Now here's a New York chart for us New Yorkers in the inside. And the New York chart is from January 1st, 1898, New York City. And here's the Aries ingress chart, and the key things that I see here are the Saturn on Uranus, which is in our financial sector. If you could not lean on that table because it's moving the screen, thank you. Okay, the Saturn is on the Uranus, which has to do with kind of an omen of limits on our financial structure in the city. And the biggie here is Pluto at the bottom of the chart, which has been going back and forth over the base of the chart. Now I have a colleague that moved out of New York, and they said to me, "Aren't you scared?" I was like, no. Because Pluto spends a very long time going over here, and if Pluto, the base of the chart is if it's your home, and New York's our home, is the bottom, the infrastructure, the pipes. So right now, they're kind of getting undermined a bit by Pluto. Usually digs in and brings things up, and we have some really old pipes in New York City, and sewage system that's really old, so it's already kind of been over this point. Pluto's going to be retrograding back over this point. So I looked up sinkholes. And when Pluto, this is a symbol for Pluto, was conjunct the IC, the Imoncelli, which is Latin for the base of the chart, with just a 1.5 degree orb last summer. I mean, not last summer, 3 years ago was when it started. It's been there for a while, so it's been working away the water and the rains. So here's a couple of the sinkholes, and this is Brooklyn and 79th Street. Here is one, May 2014, Lower East Side of Manhattan, a 20-foot-long sinkhole due to a water main that ruptured under East Houston Street near Ludlow, causing a flood. Here's a flood outside Katz's Delicatessen. And here's one in the middle of Williamsburg Street in June of last year. Washington Heights, December. They're getting bigger. Don't worry. There's not going to be one at the Pennsylvania Hotel today. We're fine. Here's one, and this looks like the library on 42nd Street, doesn't it? Yeah. It looks like this car was maybe over it. That looks like a small hole. I don't know. So this was this year. Ooh. Well, Pluto's at the bottom of the New York chart. There's going to be something with our pipes, so I'll get into stuff about saving your water. Okay. All right. No issues without a solution, right? All right. So here's the solar eclipse over Russia. So this is Russia on the inner wheel, and if you look here at the eclipse point, this 8th house is resources that they get from other countries. That's where the eclipse fell, and as we know, there's been sanctions, and there's been the hijacking the price of oil, which is where Russia makes a lot of their money. And here's Pluto, which is power control over their Neptune, which is oil. It's exactly on that degree, so it's a power play occurring. Everyone see that? It's pretty. I put the big arrows because it's in a big room, so you can all see it. Okay, so on top of the eclipse and the Aries ingress and the last Uranus-Pluto square this week, we have the solar eclipse is falling in between the full blood moons. Okay, so in 2 weeks we're going to have a full blood moon. So everyone rest up. And I'll give you the degrees so you can check your chart, or if you don't have your chart, come to me and have me do your chart, so we can see if it's hitting you. But it's very important culminations this year because we have the last two this year. So Tetra is 4, so there are 4 lunar eclipses in a row. It's an omen of something to come, dramatic change, personal, political, economic. They fall on Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles, all of them on Jewish holidays. And the big one was in 1492, before Columbus discovered America. So it's an omen of something really big to happen, like they started announcing the ETs and new forms of energy, which I'll get into. So these are the dates. We've already hit 2 of them, and like I said, in between there's a solar eclipse. So last spring we had the first one. Does anyone remember what that coincided with? The April one last year. There was a lot in the news. There was a lot of mystery surrounding something because it's an eclipse, full moon, an eclipse that's kind of eclipses something, it hides something. So that was when the disappearance of flight MH370 happened. It was the week before. Leading up into this full moon is a frenzy. The moon rules the tides, rules the fluids in your body. There's like an excess of retaining fluids in the head. There are more emergencies at the emergency rooms on full moons. In between, we had, at April 22nd, I didn't put it here, was the cardinal climax, which is the cardinal cross that occurred when all the countries were taking sides. Basically gearing up for what's going to be happening over the next year or two. Then we had a solar eclipse at 8 Taurus, followed by the lunar eclipse. This was all about, all of these are falling on the Aries-Libra axis, which has to do with me and my needs and our needs as a couple or as a partnership or as a relationship. So all the companies are taking sides over who's going to be on whose side, who's your allies. So this has to do a lot with relationships. A lot of relationships hit a snafu around October of last year. So then we had solar eclipse at 0 Scorpio. So this is a very hidden degree. So a lot of things that were happening behind the scenes. We just had this eclipse yesterday, and then here we go in 2 weeks, 1424 Libra. And on this lunar eclipse, Uranus is going to be, I'll show you, on the U.S. Sun, on China's Mercury Neptune, which has to do with communications, and on Vladimir Putin's Sun. So the final one is going to be in September of this year, so we'll get to that. So here's a snapshot so you can see the full blood moon, where it looks like you'll see the sun exactly opposite the moon. And I think this is probably showing over Washington, D.C., because the moon is in our house of military. So we're always looking to do something with them. And here's the final one, which is going to be at 4 Aries. So let's see how they look with other countries. Okay, this was the cardinal cross I was just mentioning. Where you could see everything was geared up, people taking sides, but it's like the spokes of a wheel. Everyone's kind of glued in one place. Nobody's going to move because it's going to upset everybody else. You're going to affect everybody when there's a cross, particularly if you live with one of these in your chart. I know some people that do. They have to stay very solid and stubborn because anything that hits one point is hitting all 3 of the other points at the same time by degree. So here's Vladimir Putin's chart. As you can see, he's right in the middle of all these eclipses and full moons with almost a 14-degree Libra sun. So when we look at his chart, sorry about that. Here's a quad wheel with him. So this is a method of a technique where you can see all the different layers of what's happening. The progressions are in the second level, which is one day for every year of your life after you're born, and then the solar arc is one day for every year. This is 1 day for each day for a year after you're born, and then this is the transits on the outside. That's where everything is today. So here I see his Mars is about to change signs during this year by solar arc. So within about 9-10 months, his Mars is going to go into Pisces. And Mars rules his 6th house, which is also, as a leader, it's a military house, but there could be something to do with his health possibly coming up. Then I used another technique that I don't know if a lot of mundane astrologers do quite often, but you definitely do it with people's charts, but mundane astrology, you're looking at the charts of countries and world leaders and eclipses over nations. So I did the composite of the US and Russia and the inside. So I wanted to see what was happening in the next couple weeks because there's so much conflict. And here we have the full moon is falling right across this axis, which has to do with us and them. So it's falling in the 12th house, so there's a lot of hidden things that we're not going to see what's going on, but the 6th house is the house of military action as well. And then the solar eclipse on the 13th, which happens right 2 weeks before the final blood moon. So these are all important key dates. It's falling exactly on the US and Russia Mars. Mars has to do with war and aggressive action. Uranus has been hovering over this, so you can see why it's antagonistic. Uranus is about sudden breakups and things coming to light. And then what's also key is right around this period, Saturn, which is in Sagittarius now, it's finished through Scorpio and is going back into Scorpio until about the end of the summer, I think, and then it's going to go back into Sag, so the Scorpios get a little bit of a break. But when it goes into past zero Sag, it's going to be affecting this chart as well, right at the September 13th eclipse. And the moon rules Cancer, which is our relationship out in the world. It's right at the top of the chart, so that's what we look for to see what's going on with that. And here's the full blood moon over Russia, which is the final full blood moon. And it's falling across the 3rd, 9th axis, which is this axis, which has to do with communications and foreign relations. So just because there's so much Neptune and things that are hidden that we really don't know exactly what to know is going on, I thought that might have to do with some sort of hidden financial, there's a lot of financial things in that chart, subterfuge or something that they're going to blame on Russia to do with our financial markets. Did anyone see Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, that movie about we trained a US spy to hack into the Russian financial system because they were getting ready, in this story to hack into the US markets and put all these trades through to crash our system. So they always put in the movies ahead of time, which is ruled by Neptune, what's going to happen to some level. Sometimes it's exactly what happens, sometimes it's a little bit different, but in this movie that's what they had happen. And so I think with that chart, what it said to me when I put the symbolism together was they're possibly going to have some sort of economic, financial crisis event happen, and it'll get blamed on Russia. Could happen from Israel, could happen from within. That's what they call a false flag, where they pretend it's a different country that carried it out. So when it's already happened in the movie, and then if it happens in real life, you'll be like, okay, this is planned. So in any event, this chart is the US-Russia composite, again on the inside. And if we look at the final blood moon over the composite, it's falling in the 6th house of military. Saturn is exactly on the moon, 0 degrees Sag. And what I noticed was this full moon is putting the sun almost exactly back where it is, so it's almost a solar return in this chart. So the solar return with the US and Russia is always happening in some sort of hidden way. The relationship is very unseen. And it also reminded me, because Jupiter was practically back at the position where it was in Russia's chart. So I went ahead and did the Jupiter return, which happens every 10, 11 years for a person or a nation, which is what I do for clients too, if it's right at the point where they're about to have their Jupiter return, to see what it has to do with their success and their wealth and how they're improving in their social status in the world. So in this chart, here we see Venus and Jupiter together, but Venus is in fall in Virgo. It's not a popular sign for it, so they're having to work hard. But does anyone else notice the angles of this chart, the way I started this talk? 29.5 Pisces. It's exactly where the eclipse is right now. So what's happening right now is really setting up, because it's going to be triggered when Russia has their next Jupiter return, which is about expansion and doing well and broadening themselves in the world. So right at a point where they've been appointed to be in charge of the heartland of the world, which it said whoever controls the heartland controls the world, they're being hit up with this really hard, Pluto-Uranus and these angles, and the eclipse is being triggered with the south node right on the midheaven. The south node is sort of your karma. It's sort of a drag. It's a drain, all the past karma and things that are brought into this moment. So that's a really key return. So I really think if you take anything away from this, one of the key things is that there's going to be really some huge events around the final blood moon eclipse after September, because we see it happening in a lot of the charts. So what I do when I look ahead for the year for people, for clients as well, is I just keep a list of all the key solar returns and full moons and eclipses and all the degrees and when all the planets hit certain degrees, so I see if it's hitting in your chart so I can tell you in advance how to prepare. I look at all the cycles. We have to know all the cycles of the dark phase of the moon before the new moon, then the seed of the new cycle, which we're hitting now, which I was talking about because we're hitting it at the last degree of the zodiac for people that came in late. We have an eclipse this week at the last degree of the zodiac, which has to do with finishing up, manifesting, keeping a vision of what you want to accomplish and finishing things up in the next 6 months. So these are the other phases we look through. I'm just kind of go through quickly because I want to make sure we get to everything. So one of the other things we'll look at is where is the Saturn-Neptune square, because that's going to be coming into play later this year. And we already had a lot of premonitions, presages of it last year. So we find the key degree trigger points. These are all the things that I look for: angles, personal outer planets, nodes. You want to follow an eclipse for your transits. These are all the key degrees, if you know your chart that I just mentioned, with the eclipses and the full blood moons. Saturn's now at 4 Sagittarius. Anyone know where that's hitting your chart? You'll know where that's a point where you're having to work hard to accomplish things and manifest. And then these are all the other